welcome back. Welcome back. This is still P2, and now we're going to speak about the characteristics of IoT. We've gone over some of the stuff before, so we have two types of characteristics for IoT. We have general characteristics, and we also have technical characteristics. So let me go back to general first. And again, this was copied from the spec. Characteristics of IoT can be described as one single sentence. Reference it, explain it in your own words, make sure it makes sense to someone reading who doesn't really know any of this stuff. Characteristics can be split into two subcategories I mentioned before, general and technical. Some general characteristics of IoT systems and services are: number one, we have risks. Number two, ethical and privacy concerns. Number three, legal considerations. Number four, sustainability considerations. And number five, the benefits. I put that in question mark. I don't remember why, but let's get to it. I would go into more detail for each one, just like we did at the top. We simply have the heading of the thing, and then what is it and why is it important to consider? Give an example if possible. I'm not going to go into as much detail as I did before. I felt that video was very, very long. So let's do maybe one or two of them. Risks. What are risks? Why are these important? And give examples where possible. So a risk is simply something that we have to consider. A risk is a potential harm or potential hazard that could occur. We have to design our systems with risks in mind. If we don't, we're bound to fail. If we don't design things in a way that can accommodate for certain risk or certain things happening, the system will fail, it will crash, it will always burn up, it will always burn out. It just won't work as it needs to. Give an example of this. An example of this, the example that they gave on the spec, actually, again, nothing new here. Risks including security threats, example, hacking of connected cars, allowing the intruder to operate a vehicle remotely, and the extraction of names and financial account numbers from contactless payment services without authentication from the owner. So this spec was actually designed really well for this unit. I think it goes into enough detail to allow us to quickly understand and speak about things. So the examples that I even said you should mention earlier, you could steal them from here as well. I didn't even realize that they were here. So the next one on my list, let me scroll all the way down again to general. We have ethical and privacy considerations. So again, what is it and why is it important to consider? Give an example where possible. Let me scroll up and see what the spec said. So the spec said ethical and privacy considerations, including public and professional attitudes, opinions and behaviors towards IoT, and a reduction of low-skilled employment opportunities. That's really, really true as well. When you think about it, IoT systems have allowed us to move away from having a pump attendant at the petrol station. Back in the days, someone used to stand. I mean, in the Caribbean, where I'm from, people still do this because we don't have as many IoT systems in place. Here in the UK, I go to the petrol station at midnight, for example. I pump my petrol, I put my card in, I pay for it, I drive away. Because of IoT systems, those lower skilled jobs are being wiped out. People aren't needed because you can have an IoT system there 24/7. It doesn't need to take a break. They don't need to speak to HR and complain about anything. They don't ask for a raise in pay. They simply sit there and wait for a customer to come. It's much, much better. So let me go back down to general again. And I will do the same thing for each of these. So again, we have risks, ethical and privacy considerations, legal considerations. Look at the spec. If you don't have the spec, let me scroll up. Pause the video at this point here. Zoom in or look at the video, and these are the things that you can use, and they also have examples right next to them as well. So I'm going to stop for general and I'm going to move on to technical now as well. So for technical, some technical characteristics of IoT are low mobility, they're time controlled, they're monitoring systems, low power consumption, location specific triggers. And again, I would go into more detail about each one. So low mobility, that's the first one. What is it? Why is it important to consider? And give an example where possible. Again, I'm going to cheat. Let me scroll up to my spec. I didn't even know that this was there. I was planning to just wing this and make everything up, but I didn't even know it was there. Low mobility, when a device has lower or no mobility during the lifetime or mobility during a specific region, it often applies to systems and or devices with specific functions. Example, payment, metering, point of sale, kiosk, or remote maintenance. So those are the examples. What does it mean? It means that the thing doesn't move around a lot during its lifetime. Why is this important? You design for the system that you need to design for. You don't simply design something to fit every single possible scenario that there is. That's over designing. That's not actually good. if I know that I'm designed, for example, some of my students now are working on like a home security system, which is never going to move from inside the house to anywhere else. It might move around the house. So it needs to be relatively small, relatively mobile, but it needs to have something like Wi-Fi instead of 4G because it's going to be inside the house, right? So you design for the system you have at the moment, and you do the same thing for each of the other ones. So again, we have time control, monitoring, low power consumption, trigger, location specific trigger. You go through and explain everything I mentioned before. So again, feel free to steal stuff from the specification.